a fun plant supplier, a stripper, the soon-to-be Marvel's Adam Warlock, and a homeless girl who owns an iPhone? They all get together to smuggle some happy treats through the Mexican border. What could go wrong? And that's why today in Flick Summary, we're the Millers. The film opens with David Clark, a not particularly driven man but a rather well-known, fun plant supplier. The best in Denver, if you know what I mean.
If you catch my drift.
He goes on to handle his special deliveries to all sorts of people, from a soccer mom, a waiter, to successful businessmen. If you're in Denver, David Clark is your guy. Later, we get to meet Rose, an ever-enchanting stripper who doesn't seem too thrilled about her job. At work, she helps and guides newcomers and instructs them to get a fake name in order to avoid creepy dudes from getting close and personal with you. While Rose is removing her wig and getting ready for her break, her terrible boss, Todd, asks her to forget about her break and perform a private dance on some guy that had just gotten there. What a douche.
I consider myself a good person, but I'm gonna try to make him cry.
We then cut back to David, who is just finishing his delivery route and getting to his apartment building. When he gets there, he encounters Rose, the dancer from before, who happens to be his neighbor. They share an awkward exchange when it's revealed that Rose is having some financial struggles, while David teases her about it as she heads to her apartment. Real sweet. Immediately after, David runs into his neighbor Kenny, an 18-year-old kid whose mom has apparently abandoned him and is constantly asking David for one of his happy plants, but is always rejected as David doesn't deal to kids.
We don't do that here.
Their exchange is quickly over and David heads upstairs to his apartment until he hears Kenny's voice struggling against a bunch of bad guys. As it turns out, Kenny was trying to defend a homeless girl from the bad guys who are trying to steal her iPhone. She's homeless and she has an iPhone?
You have an iPhone? Aren't you homeless?
Weird. But we'll take it. The bad guys suspect David might be a cop, but Kenny oh so gracefully steps in and says he's not a cop, but an illegal substance giver, if you catch my drift.
God damn it, Kenny.
The bad guys immediately let the homeless girl go and target David instead. This quickly escalates into a chase between the bad guys and David, who horrendously loses as the guy breaks into his apartment, steals his stash and his savings. Oof, talk about a loss. The next day, David gets hundreds of calls from some guy named Brad, as he constantly declines them due to his shock and lack of supply. Right as he declines yet another call, two huge guys kidnap him and tell him that every call from Brad must be answered. Yes, man, relax.
Whoa. Relax, okay?
The men drive him to an undisclosed location where we meet the one and only Brad, who just so happens to be David's supplier. Scared Brad might kill him, David immediately starts begging for his life and explaining the whole robbery situation. Confused, Brad explains he has no plans of killing him.
I'm so sorry about that. I did not mean to freak you out.
It's fine.
You do know I have killed people though, right?
How comforting. Instead of ending his life, Brad has a mission for David, one that involves getting a smidge and a half of happy plants from Mexico into Denver. At first, David refuses to do it, but Brad reminds him of a $43,000 debt he has to pay him and that he doesn't really have a choice. Plus, if he does it, not only will his debt be paid, but he will receive $100,000 in return. All he needs to do is give out the name Pablo Chacon and it's done. Sounds like a deal, I guess.
You got a deal.
When preparing for the journey, David decides he will wear a family disguise in order to not draw any unwanted attention to himself. He goes to Rose's job, where he offers her $10,000 for her company during this unconventional trip. She quickly declines and goes back into the break room where her boss, Todd, sets a new rule for the club. The dancers now have to have sex with the customers. Ugh. Rose has finally had enough and proceeds to quit her job, refusing to take any part in this new rule her boss has set up. You go, Jennifer Aniston. Rose. Once she gets home, she has an eviction notice hanging up on her door, which causes her to change her mind about David's offer. David decides to recruit Kenny and hires Casey, the homeless girl, in exchange of $1,000 to play the part of the son and daughter of a single dad. They leave for the airport, and just as the plane is about to take off, Rose joins their little facade, much to David's relief, but his relief turns into annoyance once she ups the number to $30K instead of $10. Ouch! He takes it anyway, and now they are finally the Happy Miller family. Hooray!
Yes! Yeah!
They finally get to their destination in an enormous RV and get into a horrifying sketchy place in order to retrieve the happy plants. David gives Pablo Chacon's name and he gets into the place with hardly any trouble at all. A one-eyed man gives David the smidge and a half of happy plants, but there is one small problem. It wasn't a smidge and a half, it's more around the tons number, filling up the entire RV actually. The one-eyed man's mother gives Kenny a fruit basket, which he's forced to accept, and they ready themselves to go on their way.
Well, that was easy.
Right when they head back on the road, a policeman stops them leaving the sketchy place and calls them out on what they just did. He demands 1,000 or a sexual favor, otherwise he will be taking them in. Originally, David asks Rose to do the favor, but the policeman prefers the company of men. Now it's Rose's turns to ask David to do it, who now asks Kenny to take over, who refuses but accepts once David tells him it's for the girls. Just as he is about to get started, the policeman asks what the hurry is and demands either the inappropriate favor or the 1,000 pesos. Once hearing he meant pesos and not dollars, David quickly gives him a $100 bill and tells the corrupt cop to keep the change. I guess you can call that a win. Maybe?
I won.
Finally back on the road, they run into the Fitzgerald family where the wife, Edith, the husband Don, and the daughter Melissa excitedly greet them due to their similar RVs. They will be important later on. They finally cross the Mexican border yet again, not before running into a few scares, but all is once and for all good. They even sing a victory song.
Coming true, believe in yourself, the rest is up to me, and don't go chasing water. Woo!
But of course, the movie is not yet over, so victory is not yet in their hands. They just don't know it yet. We return to the sketchy place the Millers retrieved the plants from and we meet someone named Pablo Chacon. Oh no! Turns out it was all a plan from Brad, who wanted to steal the happy herbals from Chacon himself. Now the one-eyed man and Chacon are after the Miller family and they're out for revenge.
Well, that's just great.
Back to the Millers, the family runs into some trouble now that, due to the RV's severe overweight, the engine crashes and they are now stuck.
Well, that's just great.
Luckily for them, they run into the Fitzgeralds again and they rescue them, driving them to a show so they can fix their RV by the next day. They are now forced to pretend one of the herbal kilos is a baby in disguise in order to keep the happy, wholesome family facade. While they get to know each other, Don asks David to open the glove compartment. David gasps when he opens it to find a gun and a badge alongside the map. Don laughs and explains it is his service gun. Not just any service gun though, the DEA service gun. Oh boy!
It's just not very good, is it?
Once they get into the car shop, they set up for camp since it won't open until the next day. Again, oh boy. Edith asks Rose to hold the baby, but she denies it in hopes to conceal it. They get into a bit of a fight and accidentally throw the baby into the streets as a bus runs it over. Edith screams in sheer horror, but Casey saves the day and explains the baby was for one of her summer classes for extra credit. No need to worry. Phew. Night finally falls and the families play drawing games while David and Rose plan to steal the RV from the Fitzgeralds during the early AM hours.
Why are you doing this?
Later, Kenny and Melissa share a moment and almost kiss, but Kenny backs down. He returns to the RV to his family and explains he rejected her because he hasn't had his first kiss yet. Early morning rolls around and David and Rose get ready to steal the RV from the Fitzgeralds. However, they accidentally wake them up and immediately assume they are trying to swing with them. Edith is flattered but doesn't think she can go through with it completely, but agrees to feel Rose up while David and Don watch. Edith does as promised and Don proceeds to do weird things to David's ear. We won't say any further than that. They return to the RV where Casey is training Kenny how to kiss, with Rose joining in on the fun, ensuing in a rather creepy three-way makeout session. Melissa spots them from the window and quickly runs off. I'd do the same, honestly. I mean, after all, she thought Kenny was tongue-kissing his mom and his sister. Gross.
I want to throw up and kill myself.
The following morning, the Fitzgeralds leave as the Millers head into the car shop. Unfortunately for them, the shop has been broken into by none other than Pablo Chacon.
Oh no. Not again.
The family comes clean about their actual identities, and Chacon becomes particularly curious once Rose reveals she was a stripper. She performs a strategic dance on him and attacks him. A fight ensues and the family manages to get away. For now. Remember the fruit basket Kenny was forced to take? Well, it had a spider inside which happened to crawl out of it while they were getting away from the bad guys. The arachnid crawls into Kenny's pants and bites him in his, well, no easy way to say this, his private parts.
This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Ugh.
They rush to the hospital while David calls Brad and forces him to pay him $500K due to the extra hassle he has been through. Brad agrees without a problem, but he has to make it before the next day. At the hospital, Casey meets Scotty P, a guy who flirts with her and gives her his number. Now that Kenny has to stay in the hospital for at least a few hours, David and Rose hang back at the RV until Casey brings Scotty P into the car, showcasing his iconic tattoo. Rose and David get parental with Casey, but let her go onto her date. Once Casey returns and Kenny is off the hook, the family hurries back on the road again. The girls ask him about his sudden urge to get back so early, and David accidentally reveals that he will now be getting $500K for the job, upsetting Rose and Casey for the small amount of money they are receiving in comparison to him.
But you guys are getting paid?
David refuses to renegotiate and leaves without his fake family. Nice move, David. As soon as he's back on the schedule, David regrets leaving the family and promptly returns to get him back. He profusely apologizes and begs for them to come back on the road with him. After some more begging and splitting the $500K 4 ways, the fake family accepts his apologies. Just before they go, they run into the Fitzgeralds yet again, and Melissa tells Kenny that what she saw was effed up, to say the least. Kenny confesses the whole truth about the family, who they really are, and what they are actually doing. As Kenny spills the beans, Pablo Chacon and his one-eyed friend catch the family, and yet another fight ensues. Dom shows his true DEA power and beats the one-eyed man with a mug. Go, Dom! Pablo Chacon is now holding a gun to Melissa as David attempts to dissuade Pablo from killing her. Fireworks go off and Chacon gets distracted, causing Kenny to sucker punch him and kissing Melissa right after from all the adrenaline.
Go get him, Tiger.
Dom arrests Pablo and pretends he will do the same to the Millers, but gives them a chance to run off again. Go, Dom! The following morning, David goes to Brad's office to retrieve the promised money. However, Brad says he didn't make it on time, but they're now even. David catches on that he never intended to pay him, which Brad, without an ounce of regret, admits is correct. This time around, though, David outsmarted Brad and called the DEA on him and gets sent to prison. Due to his collaboration to the DEA, David and anyone who was involved in the crime are admitted into the witness protection program. The Millers are sent to the suburbs, where they are harvesting their own set of happy plants and living a happy family life.
That's the way the cookie crumbles.
The end! And that's all for today. We are the Millers in a nutshell. Let us know in the comments what movie we should do next. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends. See you next time!